Yeah, certainly. Okay.
Telangana Jana Vedika. I welcome you all to the 429th session of Telangana Jana Vedika. Today, we are discussing on a topic called Gandhian journalism and is it relevant today? For this important session, we have invited Professor D.V.R. Murthy, a very well-known professor in journalism and an all India known figure. And also, he has written many articles on Gandhi and journalism, and also a book called the title is same, Gandhi and journalism and is it relevant today? And I welcome him to this session. Before I hand over the mic to James Prashant to do the introduction, I'd like to tell you all that we will observe a 2-minute silence in memory of the great legend, Bharat Ratna, Lata Mangeshkar, who passed away today. It's a great loss to India and also to the world. Thank you. Thank you all. And before James Prashant, I request James Prashant to do the introduction of the topic and also introduce the speaker, Professor Murthy Garu, to the forum. And before the speaker takes over, I also request Dr. Akutota Srinvasu, Professor Akutota Srinvasu, to do the moderation again today and conduct the session. Thank you. James.
Thank you, sir. I am audible, sir?
Yeah. You are.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. I welcome everyone for Telangana Jana Vedika's forum on this Sunday, 429th session of Telangana Jana Vedika's forum this Sunday. Sir, there is some disturbance. Is it audible to everybody? Or is it fine?
Yeah. It's audible to me. No problem.
Okay. Our topic today is Gandhian journalism. Is it relevant today? Freedom of speech is foundational to liberal politics in the sense that it ensures the very existence of a liberal democracy and gives meaning to liberal values such as autonomy, dignity, and liberty. Alan Dyer writes, freedom of speech is among the most cherished constitutional rights in liberal democracies. It is entrenched in most contemporary constitutions as well as in international human rights treaties. It is often classified as a first-generation right, that is, a right protecting individuals from interference by the state. One needs to understand the scope of what exactly constitutes speech, what kinds of speech need to be protected, the amount of value given to the protection of speech with regards to other important rights or policy concerns, and the reasons underlying its protection are highly controversial and have important implications in political and legal areas. And these are reflected in the various protections given to speech, and different jurisdictions give it a varying protections depending on circumstances. Then, also to understand what amounts to freedom of speech, we also need to explain whether we need to protect speech more than non-speech activities, because speech seems to be getting more privilege compared to non-speech activities such as visuals, art, music, movies, etc. So what exactly defines speech? Possibly the values which are imparted and promoted, underscoring the protections of speech, can be explained as speech. Then it also becomes highly imperative to identify what are those values which define the protection of speech. Therefore, what counts as speech and what counts as protected speech are often interrelated, at least in legal discourse. And therefore, we need to examine these questions and identify what counts as speech and then the reasons why speech is protected as well. Across the world, disadvantaged groups have challenged the protection of certain forms of speech, claiming that certain forms of speech conflict with other rights, such as equality, or may even deprive these groups of their own right to free speech. Those that reject central traditional liberal political rights in the name of autonomy and equality consider the liberal protection of speech, regardless of its content or merit, as a repressive mechanism designed to strangle rather than facilitate genuine public deliberation. The complexity of speech, the complexity of freedom of speech is again exacerbated by the positions taken by supporters of liberalism, critics of liberalism, and radical critics of liberalism who share similar beliefs and values. The critics and radical critics of liberalism support restrictions of speech by referring to the very same values advocated by liberals, that is, autonomy, dignity, and equality. It is important to note that freedom of speech is different from a principle of general liberty, and that often the right to free speech protects the activities in the realm of communications. It is in understanding the variations of freedom of speech. One perspective explains that speech should be protected even when it is harmful to well-being of society. The second perspective explains that protecting speech is justified because in the long run, it is important to social welfare and important to the discovery of truth. And these differences have important ramifications in the manner of justification. The second perspective is not based on the individual rights of the speaker to speak his mind, neither on the rights of the audience to gain from the speech. Instead, it is based on long-term benefits for society resulting from the protection of speech. John Milton, the earliest proponent of freedom of speech in 17th century, argued that truth and falsehood should grapple with each other. But why can't we simply censor a false narrative assuring its defeat, allowing truth to emerge? On this, John Stuart Mill further said, if a censored opinion contains truth, its silencing is damaging. If conflicting opinions each contain some truth, the clash between them is the only method of discovering what the truth is. And even if the opinion has no truth in it, challenging the accepted position contributes to its vitality and decreases the chances that it degenerates into a prejudice or dogma. But if we consider Ronald Coase's argument, the market for ideas is the market in which the intellectual context is traded. The explanation of the paradox is self-interest and self-esteem. The self-esteem leads the intellectuals to magnify the importance of their own market. But self-interest combines with self-esteem to ensure that while others are regulated, regulation should not apply to them. Therefore, it is clear that the chances of true ideas to appear in the market of ideas increases, but it also increases the spread of false ideas. It has also been argued correctly that the so-called marketplace of ideas is not open to everyone who wants to communicate their ideas, because imbalances of power and money shall have severe consequences on the fairness of a public discourse. John Stuart Mill stated that even true ideas should be challenged and subjected to scrutiny and criticism. And therefore, critical of deliberative tools should be developed for the evaluation of truth and falsehoods. He says that intellectual virtues are instrumental to truth. While this topic is very expansive and vast, and nowhere else does the role of journalists become more imperative in this subject, because journalists encapsulate the very meaning of freedom of speech in a democracy by informing truth to its citizens. Especially, they become a strong fourth pillar when the people are lacking in the knowledge in the discourse of socio-political and economic theories. And Gandhiji, in 1936, he wrote in the Harijan, "Life and its problems have thus become to me so many experiments of truth and nonviolence. By instinct, I have been truthful but nonviolent. As a Muni once rightly said, I was not so much a votary of ahimsa as I was of truth. And I put the latter in the first place, the former in the second. For as he puts it, I was capable of sacrificing ahimsa for the sake of truth. In fact, it was the course of my pursuit of truth that I discovered nonviolence." In this context, Gandhiji gave a country an unparalleled philosophical dogma, and more than any other, it is the journalist's responsibility to take the discourse of truth forward by imbibing and propagation of intellectual virtues using the tools of criticism and scrutiny. Our topic today, Gandhian journalism, is most relevant in this context, and we are extremely pleased to have Professor D.V.R. Murthy to talk to us this evening on this very important and complex topic. He is the president of All India Mass Communication Teachers Association. He is currently Dean, UG Examinations, Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. He is the professor and chairman, Board of Studies, and former head of Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. He is in-head of the Department of Foreign Languages and also director, Japan Study and Information Center, Andhra University. Also, he held the position of Director of Media Relations. He is also member, Academic Senate, Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. Also, is editor, Andhra University Journal of Humanities and Management. Professor Murthy is working in the university for more than 25 years. Before joining the university, Professor Murthy worked in Deccan Chronicle as a journalist for 5 years. He published 14 books, cartoons and newspapers, 2014, Social Problems and the Indian Press, 2014, Gandhian Journalism, 2013, and Development Journalism and Analysis, 2013. Development Journalism, What Next, 2006. Media and Accountability, an Overview, 2005. He has guided 21 PhDs in political communication, development journalism, adolescence and media, family communication. He's also a member of many universities for designing course syllabus. He published 42 articles in peer-reviewed international and national journals. He delivered lectures in various organizations on media issues. He visited UK on Charles Wallace Fellowship for his postdoctoral work in the British newspapers. He visited Japan under Sakura Science Plan Scholarship in 2017 and 2008. He has visited UK, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, Cambodia, and Indonesia. We are most honored to have a distinguished scholar in our midst. And before I hand over the floor to our moderator, as per our tradition at Telangana Jana Vedika, I would like to read the preamble of our Constitution. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Now, I would like to hand over the floor to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Telangana Jana Vedika Zoom online meeting ku Dr. DVR Murthy గారికి మరియు వేదిక సభ్యులు అందరికీ స్వాగతం. వాళ్ళ ప్రధానమైనటువంటి గాంధీజీ పార్టీకి అనేటువంటి అంశం మీద మనం ఇవాళ మాట్లాడుకోబోతున్నాం, విశ్లేషించబోతున్నాం. ప్రధానంగా గాంధీజీ పాత్రికేయ విలువలు అంటే నాటి సమాజానికి చాలా వ్యత్యాసాలు కనబడుతున్నాయి. ప్రపంచంలో అనేకమైనటువంటి మార్పులు జరిగాయి. సాంకేతిక పరిజ్ఞానం ఎంతో అభివృద్ధి చెందింది. విలువల్లో కూడా అనేక మార్పులు కూడా ముఖ్యంగా 1991 తర్వాత ప్రైవేటైజేషన్, గ్లోబలైజేషన్ తర్వాత కాలంలో ప్రపంచంలో అనేకమైనటువంటి మార్పులు సంభవించాయని చెప్పడంలో ఏమాత్రం సందేహం లేదు. ఒకప్పుడు పాత్రికేయులు అంటే ఎంతో విలువను, గౌరవాన్ని, గొప్పతనాన్ని కలిగినటువంటి పాత్రికేయ ఇవాళ కొన్ని రాజకీయ పార్టీలు కానీ, రాజకీయ నాయకులు కానీ, వ్యక్తిగతంగా ప్రింట్ మీడియా కానీ, ఎలక్ట్రానిక్ మీడియా కానీ సొంతంగా డబ్బాలను ఏర్పాటు చేస్తున్నారు. వారి యొక్క వ్యక్తిగతమైనటువంటి పార్టీపరమైనటువంటి విషయాలను వాళ్ళ ప్రజల మీద రుద్దేటువంటి ప్రయత్నం చేస్తున్నారు. ఒకప్పుడు జర్నలిస్ట్ అంటే ఇచ్చినటువంటి నాటి తరుణం ఇవాళ చూసేటువంటి ప్రయత్నానికి కాకపోతే అది రాజకీయ పార్టీ విధానాలు చెప్పడం. కాబట్టి ఇవాళ ఎలక్ట్రానిక్ మీడియా కానీ, ప్రింట్ మీడియా కానీ, ముఖ్యంగా ఇవాళ సోషల్ మీడియాలో కూడా ఈ యొక్క రాజకీయ పార్టీలు అనేటువంటి అలవాటు చేసేది. నిజాన్ని అబద్ధాలుగాను, అబద్ధాలను చేస్తున్నాయి. కాబట్టి గాంధీజీ ఏదైతే విలువలు అనుకున్నాడు వాటిని సమాజంలో అది అనుసరించడం లేదనేటువంటి చాలా ప్రధానంగా చెప్పింది. కాబట్టి ఇవాళ అంతా కూడా రాజకీయ వైపు చూస్తున్నాయి కానీ, సామాజిక రంగం వైపు కానీ లేదా ఇతర రంగాల వైపు కానీ అది చూడడం లేదు అనేటువంటిది చాలా స్పష్టం. కూడా మార్పు అనేటువంటిది రావడం అనేటువంటిది జరిగింది. సో ఈ సందర్భంగా గాంధీజీ పాత్రికేయ విలువలు నేటికి అంశనీయమైనటువంటి అంశం పైన ప్రొఫెసర్ డివిఆర్ మూర్తి గారు వారు ఆంధ్ర యూనివర్సిటీ విశాఖపట్నంలో జర్నలిజం అండ్ మాస్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ లోపల డిపార్ట్మెంట్ గాను, బోర్డ్ ఆఫ్ స్టడీస్ చైర్పర్సన్ గాను, డీన్ గాను, ఇన్ఛార్జి గాను, వాళ్ళు ఇన్ఛార్జ్ అండ్ ఆల్సో డైరెక్టర్ అండ్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ సెంటర్ కు పనిచేస్తున్నారు. వారు అనేక విదేశాలకు సంబంధించినటువంటి అనేక ఆర్టికల్ కూడా రచించడం జరిగింది. సాధారణంగా
Thank you, sir. Good evening to all the participants. I'm happy that you have given an opportunity to speak on this topic. Gandhian journalism, is it relevant today? And in fact, I chose this topic long back. I was doing research on Gandhian values of journalism, which I thought they are relevant, and they were relevant in the past, also in the present context. So I did not elaborate about Mahatma Gandhi's and his contribution. You can find a lot of information on Google. Also, umpteen number of scholars wrote umpteen number of books on Mahatma Gandhi and his and values. But particularly, I chose this topic keeping in view the contemporary relevance of Gandhian values in present day journalism. So, one interesting point about Mahatma Gandhi was he was touring India around 1896, and they went to London. Other things were there, and he was writing small pieces to one magazine known as Vegetarianism. So he was writing about the importance of vegetarianism. Subsequently, went to South Africa in 1903. He started in this Indian opinion. Many things you know because about Mahatma Gandhi. So why is journalism relevant even today? I'll bring to your notice two interesting points. Sir, are you able to listen to me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
I bring to your notice two interesting points about the present day journalism. So what happened in 1998? Two British scholars conducted a survey in the world, choosing around 172 nations. They found out in 172 nations, they found one similarity that what would be covered in the newspapers and how do newspapers cover news. They found out 6 points were so important for newspapers, including other channels of mass communication. So one interesting point they found out was conflict is so important for newspapers for their coverage. The first one is they identified as a conflict. Second one, they said, what is the effect or consequence of conflict on society? This is what they covered in newspapers. And third one is they wanted to find out the proximity of news, what is very relevant or close to their area. Fourth one they found out was human interest. This is also very important for newspapers for the coverage of news. The next one they found out was something new, what happens in society they were covering. And the last one is prominence. Suppose if this is so important, if any prominent person speaks or delivers a lecture or talks something, it is covered in the newspapers or in television channels.
Sir, you wanted to send the screen?
Yeah, you want me to share the screen? I want to share. Shall I do it? Okay.
Yeah. Please.
Certainly. Just 1 minute. Shall I share the screen? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Very good. Otherwise, that will be. Can you see?
We are not able to see, sir.
Okay. Now?
No.
Okay. Let me.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Screen, sir.
Okay, right. what is happening? Yeah, I'm sharing the screen.
Right, okay, sir.
Hello? Are you able to see now or?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Blank screen.
I'm sharing the screen. Hello?
It is gone. It is gone.
Gone.
Yes.
No, I'm.
Yeah, if there's some technical problem, probably you can continue, sir.
Maybe something.
Yeah.
I stop sharing
Yes,
the screen.
yes, sir.
I'll go for extempore.
Yes.
That is invisible. Okay.
Please carry on.
Right. Okay. I'll carry on. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. It doesn't matter. I'll go extempore in that case. All right. Okay. Yeah. So that they found out in a 1998 survey, these were the important news values they were covering in the newspapers. They were giving much importance to people in power, celebrities, and entertainment, tragedy, many things they were covering in the newspaper. So what happened in contrast to this was when I was reading Mahatma Gandhi's Young India, some of the issues, and I also read something in Harijan, because these issues were available in the library. I was reading them. I found out Mahatma Gandhi was prominently focusing on 4 issues in his writings. So in one context, Mahatma Gandhi said that the journalism is a byproduct of his ideology. He never said that he was a journalist, nor he was a writer. But one book, 2 books Mahatma Gandhi wrote. One, it is My Experiments with the Truth. The other one was Hind Swaraj. In Hind Swaraj book, he was talking about and answering many questions asked by a reader. In that context, he was explaining certain things. From that, I could draw some values Mahatma Gandhi practiced through journalism. So he was practicing one important aspect was culture. He was prominently writing on cultural issues. Second, he was also writing on peace. Third one, he was writing on development issues. Fourth one, he was writing on probity in public life. So these 4 issues Mahatma Gandhi was focusing in his writings. In various places, particularly in Young India. If you remember, 1925, 26, 27, he was writing extensive and development issues, he was also writing on cultural issues. And in one context, he also said that he distinguished the difference between culture and civilization. And he was saying, particularly East Asian countries, particularly India, he was referring to culture specific, whereas Western countries were civilization specific. So he was stressing on culture in the context of helping the neighbors, taking care of the people, service, other things he was talking about. In contrast, he was saying that civilization was so important, constructing buildings and structures were so important in civilization. That was the context he was saying it. And many times he was writing on culture in Young India and Harijan. One example I'll bring it to you. In 1925-26, Mahatma Gandhi was talking about women's empowerment. So you can go back around 100 years back, was talking about women empowerment, and he never said women should not be treated as subordinates. And he was talking about women's empowerment. Second, he was also talking about, he was also against population control. Maybe a controversial bit, people may oppose it, but he was saying in 1925-26, population control should not be done. And he was against use of family control methods. He was writing in particular week about that 2 issues. The next issue he was talking about was peace. And he was using the concept of peace or non-violence in his writings. The third one he was talking about was development, and the last one is probity in life or honesty in public life. In contrast, these 4 news values, what we find in present day newspapers, in many newspapers you find it, culture is not prominently promoted nor written in newspapers. Instead, people talk about consumerism, The culture is replaced by the consumerist issues and consumer concepts. Peace is replaced by conflict. Development is replaced by politics, and probity in public life is replaced by crime news. So I made analysis of English newspapers. I took 5 English newspapers and found them about these issues: culture, peace, development, property life. I selected Deccan Chronicle, Indian Express, Hindu, Statesman, and Times of India. And I did not come across a single news item on peace. You can imagine the newspapers were focusing much on politics and talking about crime, and they were focusing much on consumer issues, particularly in commerce and business space. You find much about it. So no newspaper published a single news item on peace. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi was talking about peace or non-violence. So one of the scholars who was influenced by Mahatma Gandhi's writings and his practice of non-violence was Johan Galtung, a Norwegian scholar who came to India in 1960s, and he conducted a survey in 2 villages in Kerala. I'm talking about 1960s. And many people, he conducted a survey and asked the people what was the contribution of Mahatma Gandhi in that small survey. And the majority of the people said he brought independence to India. And other people said he was doing this Harijan upliftment, Sarvodaya, and other things people talked about. Majority of the people, nearly 75% of the people were talking about Mahatma Gandhi's contribution was bringing independence to India. And this Johan Galtung subsequently was influenced by Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of peace and non-violence. He was writing on peace communication, influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. And this Johan Galtung showed a difference between peace and non-violence. In one context, he was asked what was the difference between peace and non-violence. And he said creative use of non-violence is considered to be peace. And even today, Johan Galtung contributes a lot to peace studies in the world. So that was the influence of Mahatma Gandhi and Johan Galtung. And next one is development. And Mahatma Gandhi was writing many issues in development, particularly about the food, the consumption of food, particularly how to eat, how to grow trees, and he was particularly writing on nature cure. So you can come across so many issues written by Mahatma Gandhi and development. And the last one he was writing about was probity in public life. He was talking about honesty in public life, particularly for representatives or for the politicians or the people in public life. But in contrast, now you say it in newspapers, you find nearly 30% of the news they dedicate, all the newspapers dedicate to crime. This is a contrast to Mahatma Gandhi's views on these 4 issues. And in Hind Swaraj, he was talking about, and he was highlighting the objectives of newspapers. And one reader asked him, what do you think about the objectives of newspapers? He highlighted 3 important issues that newspapers should consider in their reports. One was, Mahatma Gandhi was saying that understand popular feelings and you give them expression to it. Understand popular feelings. That was the first objective of newspaper according to Mahatma Gandhi. The second one was he was talking about arouse among people certain desirable sentiments. And third, he was talking about fearlessly expose popular defects. So these 3 issues he was talking about newspapers' role in society. And he was practicing these 3 values in his young India and Harijan, because a lot of reports are there. I can refer to them later. I can show you. So one particular statement given by Mahatma Gandhi was about newspapers. He described as one reader asked him, how do you describe the view of journalism? Mahatma Gandhi said, the newspaper press is a great power, but just as an unchained torrent of water submerges whole countryside and devastates crops, even so an uncontrolled pen serves but to destroy. If the control is from without, it proves more poisonous than want of control. It can be profitable only when exercised from within. That was a statement given by Mahatma Gandhi. And he was talking about the control of the newspapers. He was not against freedom of speech or expression, but he was talking about control within for the newspapers, which is lacking in present day journalism. And he was stressing on another interesting point, that you fearlessly write in newspapers what you think good for the society. So in one context, I'll bring to your notice, in 1920s, as soon as this Jallianwala Bagh massacre, he was writing one editorial in Young India in which he said he was asking the Sipahis to rebel. Now that was very interesting piece. He wrote it in that, and the British government at that time, they foisted a case particularly about sedition, section 124A. This is also relevant in present day context. So section 124A, and Gandhi was asked to appear before a judge for this sedition case. Gandhi, a lot of things happened. Gandhi went to the court and stood in front of the judge, and his judge asked him, "Did you commit any crime?" Mahatma Gandhi said, "I did not commit any crime, but I acknowledge that I wrote the piece in that Young India, and I am willing to undergo any punishment you give it to me." The judge said that for such kind of a person, I cannot give you any kind of a judgment, but you will be imprisoned for 6 years. Mahatma Gandhi said, "This is very mild judgment for me." And he said single sentence, the sentence is as mild as any judge could inflict on me. And so far as entire proceedings are concerned, I must say that I could not have expected greater courtesy. This was a statement given by Mahatma Gandhi. But he also told the judge that sedition was a crime was not committed by me, but sedition was a crime committed by you, Britishers. You came and occupied my country, and that was sedition. But I am talking about freedom of my country. Therefore, I am not a criminal. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. And Broomfield, the judge at the time, said, I could not give you any kind of a punishment, except as per law, I can give you only 6 years. So that was the fearlessness of Mahatma Gandhi in that context. And he was writing many issues fearlessly, talking about many others. One issue I'll bring to your notice that Mahatma Gandhi said, we popularly talk about if anybody slaps on your cheek, you show it the second cheek. That was not the statement given by Mahatma Gandhi. He wrote a particular piece in Young India in which he specifically said, if somebody slaps you on your cheek, you show the second cheek, even if you have courage to slap the other person. You have the strength and courage to do it, but you control yourself to show the second the cheek to the other person to beat you. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. And he said, you control yourself in spite of your courage.
Excuse me, sir. Sir.
Hello?
Excuse me, sir. There's a lot of echo from your side, sir. There's a lot of echo.
Why? What is the problem?
I don't know.
I'm not using even shall I switch on the fan?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, sir.
Now it's okay. Are you able to listen? Hello?
Yeah. Now it is clear, sir.
Now it's clear? Okay.
Yeah.
So Mahatma Gandhi said that even if you have courage to beat the other person, show the second cheek to him to beat you. If you stand fearlessly in front of him, he can do nothing. That's what he elaborately wrote a piece in that Young India. I've got the reference. I'll give it to you later. So in this context, Mahatma Gandhi was talking about fearlessness in practicing journalism. In contrast now, you see the modern day journalism with all the fallacies or loopholes, you find them. So I'll give you just a brief gist of modern day journalism, what is happening in India. And this was given by one topmost journalist, Outlook editor Mehta said, these issues are very prominent in Indian journalism. And he said, one is subjectivity, the second one is inaccuracy, third one is misquote, fourth one is marketing men as editorial heads, and dumbing down news, sting operations, breaking news for dozen times, TV studios as courtrooms. Public relations industry is a prime source of news and media. And the last one is SMS voting and serious human interest stories. This is the practice in journalism nowadays. And what Mahatma Gandhi was practicing in India, you can see the contrast in present day journalism. So he was stressing on 4 issues, what I was referring to. The one was culture, second one is peace, third one is development, and fourth one is probity in public life. So I made an analysis of newspapers about development issues in modern day newspapers. See, I found out not even 5% of news items they focus on development and in India. Not even 5%. Even if when they publish 100 news items, not even 5 items they focus on development. So that is the state of journalism we are practicing it. And Mahatma Gandhi was writing much on development 1920s, 1930s. So wherever he wrote, he was writing much on development. You see the contrast in present day journalism that you do not find development issues in newspapers. And one interesting point he said about development, he was talking about and writing development, he said simple sentence. I recognize no God except the God that is to be found in the hearts of the dumb millions. And I worship the God that is truth or truth which is God through the service of these millions. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. And he said, I wanted to practice development. I want to educate people. And that was the mission of Mahatma Gandhi in his journalism. The next one he was talking about was peace. So peace he was also talking about as a program for journalists to highlight the non-violent issues and also promote peace, and that's what he did in Mahatma Gandhi in his Young India and Harijan. Two issues he was writing, and another important issue he was talking about was language. And Mahatma Gandhi was saying that language must be very neutral, unbiased. It must not be very aggressive. He was insisting on language in the news reports. In his in his writings.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Shall I proceed? Okay, language. So in contrast, he said in one context, he said, journalists must introspect and verify whatever they come across. He was talking about verification 1920s, early 1920s and later part of the 20s. He was talking about verification news reports. Don't publish anything in a hurry. You please verify every item that you publish in newspapers, because majority of the people read your newspapers and believe, and you are the information carrier, and don't use any aggressive language in your news reports or whatever you read in newspapers. He was stressing on language in his statements, and he never wrote any such type of language, never used any such language in his writings. So that's an important component of Mahatma Gandhi. And how can you practice this news reports? Yeah, I was referring to Johann Galtung, and he said and identified that the language must be neutral, it must be very unbiased, and he identified 17 issues what Mahatma Gandhi used in his news reports. And Johann Galtung was saying, avoid focusing exclusively on the suffering, fears, and grievances of one party. This divides the parties into villains and victims and suggests that coercing or pursuing the villains represents a solution. Instead, treat as equally newsworthy the suffering, fears, and grievances of all sides. So don't exclusively highlight one group of in a dispute. Give equal importance to both the parties or both the groups in an issue. And he was talking about peace, truth, people, and solutions. This is what Mahatma Gandhi was stressing in his reports. I made a small analysis of newspapers, how headlines they write in newspapers with a negative tone. Just I give you 2, 3, 4 examples from Hindu. The example is, you can say it, one headline they wrote, it ensures safe passage for civilians in Sri Lanka. Kalyan factor won't erode Muslim vote bank, and this is he won't erode Muslim bank. Nobody has power to get case registered against a sitting judge. So these are the type of news items you come across, and I'll give you just a few headlines that I've selected from English newspapers where they talk about the negative tone in the headline. For example, hello?
Yes.
Shall I proceed? Okay. Yeah. See, some headlines are like stressed out techie ends life. The police medals, court expresses dismay. As band begins Mao's blast track, Bashir came to Ahmedabad to spot terror talents. terror suspect linked to fugitive gang lord. When couple fight on Facebook, you can see all the negative headlines which are highlighted in newspapers. Boy dies as estate owner opens fire. Domestic thieves don't qualify as cruelty. Maha crackdown on Sana. You can see these type of headlines newspapers nowadays use. And this headline is very interesting. Boost to fetch 1,300 crores for state. At tensed up, AP eagerly awaits Sri Krishna report. So these are the type of headlines people use in modern day newspapers. Eagerly and boost, strangle. These are the words which are prohibited, which are not supposed to be used in newspaper headlines. And that's what is detested by the peace lovers and peace journalists. For example, one editorial in Indian Express wrote like this: the latest bout of breast beating and fist shaking that is going on over the issue of so and so, so and so. They were talking about breast beating and fist shaking, and these types of words are not allowed to be used in peace journalism. And modern day newspapers are writing all these headlines, which was not encouraged by Gandhian journalism. And the last one I'll give you a point. And Mahatma Gandhi said the press is called the fourth estate. It is definitely a power, but to misuse that power is a criminal. I am a journalist myself and would appeal to fellow journalists to realize the responsibility and to carry on their work with no idea other than that of upholding the truth. And Mahatma Gandhi was saying, the truth is more important. He was saying in 1947, in that context, he said, in 1947, Mahatma Gandhi was saying that the Harijan must be closed as early as possible, and he was not in favor of publishing Harijan. He said, the present day government, at the time Indian government came to power, 1947, he was saying, I was supposed to write against the government which I brought to power, which I did not want to do it. Better, I wanted to close this publication, Harijan. And towards last of writings, he said, I advise people to read scriptures instead of reading newspapers. In 1947, Mahatma Gandhi was saying, I advocate people to read scriptures to keep their mind peaceful instead of reading the writings in the newspapers. And he was talking about sensationalism in newspapers at that time. And you can imagine how Mahatma Gandhi was a visionary, and he could foresee the things that would happen in the newspaper or media industry. And he was also talking about freedom of press, in which he was specifically saying that journalists should not misuse the freedom of the press. He was talking about, elaborately wrote one piece in Young India. And we come across so many issues Mahatma Gandhi discussed and highlighted in his writing. And that's what Mahatma Gandhi said. Now the present question is Gandhian journalism relevant today? I foresee that is highly relevant, but we are living in the age of commercialism or consumerism. Therefore, newspapers and media, they want to make money. And one thing they're forgetting, which Mahatma Gandhi was stressing, was public service. So now you see it in modern newspapers, public service versus profit. And Mahatma Gandhi was talking about the role of newspapers was to serve the public in which they're existing. And the public service concept is missing, and the journalism or media is becoming more prone to profit. And that's one deplorable thing in modern day journalism. And one American writer, Stephen Hay, he was saying that, writing about Mahatma Gandhi in 2002, he said, any problem in the world can find a solution in Mahatma Gandhi's writings. That's what he said. Any problem in the world can find a solution in Mahatma Gandhi's writings. That's what Stephen Hay was saying. And he particularly referred to two issues I'll bring to your notice. One is, he said, these are the future problems he was talking about. They could find a solution. One was physical violence within and among nations, socio-economic problems such as poverty, illiteracy, and the needs of women and children, further degradation of the planet's atmosphere, water, soil, and consequent life itself. And the last one is decay of strands of moral conduct. Moral conduct decay will be there. And these four problems can find a solution in Mahatma Gandhi's writings. That's what Stephen Hay was saying in 2002 when he was writing about Mahatma Gandhi's non-violence. Another writer, Dennis Dalton wrote a book, Gandhi's Power, in which he was talking about the Satyagraha and the words coined by Mahatma Gandhi. And Dennis Dalton was talking about Mahatma Gandhi's coinage of new words like Satyagraha, civil disobedience movements. Many words he coined it and contributed to public discourse. And Dennis Dalton was writing somewhere. He used to ask his students, do you like Mahatma Gandhi or not? If somebody says yes, he used to declare the student is in the right path. If he says no, you are in the wrong path. That's the conclusion this Dennis Dalton was drawing in his classroom, and he was so influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. In 1976, he wrote the book Gandhi's Power. Of course, many scholars, many people wrote books on Mahatma Gandhi and his contribution. And his books are so influential. One can read those books. And I conclude my speech with one example. What happened in 1896-97? Swami Rama's guru was there in Himalayas. One employee approached him, sir, what can I do in my life? The guru said, you speak truth for 90 days. And this gentleman who was working in the railways in those times, he was speaking truth for 90 days. What happened when he started speaking truth, he lost his job. Then subsequently, his wife and children deserted him and he was left alone. And after 90 days, he was speaking. He received one envelope with all papers saying that he was the owner of thousands of acres of land, and he said, this is what you got it for speaking truth. After 90 days, he realized that since he spoke truth for 90 days, he got the gift. And Mahatma Gandhi, who made an experiment with the truth, so we got independence. That was the Gandhi's influence on society. And perhaps he was the leader. If you search in Google, you find lakhs and lakhs of words or reports on Mahatma Gandhi. And that is the power of Mahatma Gandhi, and who is an apostle of nonviolence. And he can be a right model for journalism in 21st century too. But do journalists listen is a big question mark, and it's $1 million question nobody can answer. And perhaps majority of the journalists do not read Mahatma Gandhi, and they don't understand Mahatma Gandhi's contribution to journalism. He was writing on various issues long back, and they are worth emulated by journalists. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
సుమారుగా
Thank you.
టిఆర్ మూర్తి గారు
Yeah.
35 నిమిషాల సమయం పాటు గాంధీజీ ప్రాథమిక విలువలు నేటికి అనుసరణీయమా అనేటువంటి అంశం మీద వారు చాలా స్పష్టంగా మాట్లాడారు. ముఖ్యంగా ఉమెన్ ఎంపవర్మెంట్ కి సంబంధించి కానీ గాంధీ చెప్పినటువంటి పీస్ అండ్ నాలెడ్జ్, డెవలప్మెంట్, కల్చర్, పబ్లిక్ సర్వీస్, తర్వాత యంగ్ ఇండియా, అర్జన్ అనేటువంటి చట్టాలకు సంబంధించిన విషయాలు, అనేక విషయాలు వారికి ఆ తెలంగాణ జనవేదిక తరఫున ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి ధన్యవాదాలు సార్. ఇప్పుడు నా మిత్రులు ప్రొఫెసర్ సుధాకర్ గారు. ప్రొఫెసర్ సుధాకర్ సార్.
Sir. Very good evening, sir. Thank you very much, Professor Murthy garu, for your excellent enlightening subject, the most controversial subject. Sincerely, I thought was that in the contemporary society, where we are going, the so-called media, both print and electronic media, has underwent a lot of changes. And there is it is very difficult to a common man to understand as to whether a particular story which is depicted in the newspaper or appearing on the electronic channel is correct or not.
Yeah.
Because every political party do have their own political party paper and news and electronic media. And so therefore, what people like me could able to understand is that every party always wanted to suppress the realities and propagate all the false information which is of great use for those political parties. And this is not only from regional level to that of a national level as well. So popularly of the lighter side, we come across a word Godi media. No? Around 8 channels are there. And to tell very frankly, I used to watch these channels as a matter of funniness, for joke. Like, for example, Arnab Goswami is crying, this, that, all those things is
Yes.
only a kind of comedy. But however, it is unfortunate that it has got top rating. Of course, there is a case that is going on whether the rating has been manipulated or not. That is this. And when you are talking about Gandhian political thought, Gandhian philosophy and
Yes.
value journalism, as he was expected of in his writing during his time, maybe in Harijan or in many other papers. So where the journalism has gone, what is the fate of this fourth estate? How this fourth estate has got its prominence and importance, and the so-called paid news has transferred to that of fake news. And what would be the next name that the people like you, the professors like you, have to cast upon? Because you are very positively speaking, Professor Sir, that Indian media is good, but can I just, it is for our consumption, I would like to read a few of the anchors on whom are the so-called press persons on whom we can pay some attention. Look at Karan Thapar's interviews. Rajiv Sardeshai, Pranay Rai, Karan Rajdan and Nidhi Rajdan, late Vinod Duha, and Ravish Kumar as said. So we can really see a lot of changes between their interaction and interview with the politicians and the way in which they try to project the near reality, or maybe I cannot say that the reality, but near reality. But you look at, I will also cite a few of the famous anchors, maybe world famous, we use world famous anchors. Arnab Goswami, Navika from Republic, Navika Kumar from Times Now, Sudhir Ranjan Chaudhary, G News 18, and Amish Devagan, same, Rajat Sharma from India TV, Rubika Lekwet, ABP News, Anjana Om Kashyap, and Rohit Sharma, to cite a few of the people. Look what has happened yesterday when Modi was stayed for various reasons. Obviously, it is definitely not because of the poor, the farmers who have actually objected. It is the right TV says that there are only BJP people who have started, but whereas, and the people have said that there is the meeting in which he has to attend, there were only, he has to address only chairs. But in spite of this, imagine how these two medias have tried to translate and mislead the people in such a circumstances. What would be my basic question is where this value journalism is going, and whether I think it was the last interview that was given to by Modi to Karan Rajdeep Sardeshai or Karan Thapar. Then that was last meeting with Modi, and after taking a glass of water, never has appeared. And this is what a kind of democracy, and this is a kind of media where, what can I say? It is not a fake media. It is not paid media, is already gone. And even beyond fake media, this is my feeling, personal feeling, is that when not only the national channels which we watch, but even in case of regional channels, sub-regional channels, all these things are happening. At the same time, I should also add about the social media as well. Social media is not stopped to that extent. It is not actually depicting what right is and what wrong is there. It is also having contributing its own might for destroying the society. And now poor people, man, doesn't know what really is going on, what is the news, what is the correct news, what is the veracity of the news. Can we trust a news which may be real or which may not be real? So these are all my feelings about by looking at the media and transformation of media from one stage to other stage. But at the same time, pen power is soared. But this fourth estate, what I think, I don't feel that definitely all of the participants will concur with me that it is actually losing its credentiality and value system. And many a time, whenever fake news are spread in Indian context, American newspapers, the New York Times, the Guardian, they're laughing at us. In the writing, even on that other day, I saw that premier's meeting in New Delhi, in America, was depicted in such a manner, and they saw that the New York Times has published it. And I was browsing to New York Times has never published that. But still, then this is, we are very expertized in morphing and spreading fake news and all that. So where should it will stand? Many a time, Press Council of India and many other organizations are crying hard to see that the real news, to the extent possible, real news can be translated to people at large. So this is what actually is my feeling, because this is an appropriate time when a professor from journalism like you, like Professor Nageshwar, or like other people happen to come, I must exhibit my feelings, may it be correct or may not be correct as such, because the feelings are such that it is untrusty. Majority of the entire electronic and print and electronic media simply divided into a kind of what digital and press media. This is what is my considered opinion, subject to correction. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. A simple question. Simply, shall I answer the question?
Yes, sir, please go.
Yeah, sir, I give you, this is what I said. Mahatma Gandhi in 1947, April 27th, he wrote, I just read you for a small 2 sentences which you will understand. Unfortunately, the newspapers have become more important to the average man than the scriptures. I would advise them to give up reading newspapers. They would lose nothing by so doing, whereas real food for their minds and spirits lies in the scriptures and other good literature. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. I give you one instance which you were asking. So 1980s and the agenda was set by the people, particularly if any events were there, newspapers were covering. In 1990s and in the beginning of 21st century, the point was government was setting the agenda and newspapers were covering. And after 2010, because of proliferation of television channels, because of a lot of competition, one media to another media, the agenda is set by the media channels. The agenda, what I mean by agenda is what they cover is becoming so important for the people. So they are choosing and they're aligning with different political parties. Till 1991, we never saw there was a polarization in the newspaper. Newspapers were mostly covering except 1 or 2 newspapers. And now you see the polarization in the newspapers into 2 groups, pro-establishment, anti-establishment. It means either pro-government or anti-government. Do not find neutrality in the news. That's what Mahatma Gandhi was saying. Truth is so important for him. And now truth has become a casualty in the 21st century. And therefore, we used to teach social responsibility of the media. I used to teach what media have, what type of responsibility to other things. Now I'm talking about individual responsibility. So it is your responsibility to believe news or not to believe. Whatever you get through WhatsApp or any Facebook or anything, you have to judge whether it is true or not. The responsibility lies with you, not with the media. And now we talk about one important issue is called shareworthiness. If you want to share some item on WhatsApp, you must think twice before you share it with others. So mostly what I do with WhatsApp is I remove all the stuff I receive through WhatsApp. I never share it with anybody else because I know it is a trash. It has got nothing to do. Everything is fake. What I believe is news that is shared on WhatsApp is followed by a newspaper journalists nowadays. And they check WhatsApp, then they'll go for reporting. That is the state of journalism now in India. And you can imagine another 4 to 5 years, where will newspapers head for? I do not know. Most newspapers may disappear. They may change the platform to digital platform to serve the needs of the people. And this has become a very big business. And nowadays, not only a business, it is a shield for other kinds of business. I give you just one interesting point to you. 1977, 1978, the Second Press Commission was appointed by the Government of India, and it was writing about jute press, J-U-T, jute press. In Hindi, jute means lying. And one newspaper establishment, particularly Indian Express and also Times of India, both were having jute industries. And whatever money they were getting in jute industries, they are investing in newspapers. In that context, the Second Press Commission said there should be no jute press in India. That they were referring to jute industries and other things. And same thing happened in 1990s, 1980s. The jute press is everything is a lie. So one Czechoslovakian journalist was asked a question about the state of journalism in the world. And he answered he would find three things in newspapers. He said total truth, half truth, and total lies. That's what he said. Total truths you find in sports space, half truths you find in weather reports, and total lies you find it on the front page. That's what he said. And it seems to be very apt in the present day context. You need to verify the news item from your own common sense, from your own point of view, judge each news item, and don't go by the newspaper reports. If you compare two newspapers, you know where to find the truth. So this is the state of journalism that is prevailing in India. And I never trust any news item. So I advise my people like you must think and make a comment. You think about the news item and you judge it accordingly. You can accept it or reject it. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Next question.
Manoj Reddy garu.
Vishnu Chaudhary, sir.
Charan Chaudhary.
Sir, Chaudhary, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, you will mute, sir. Unmute yourself, sir, please.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I congratulate Professor Murthy for his presentation on a very vital issue of Mahatma Gandhi's views on the role of media or his style of functioning and its relevance in the present days. Rama Ragaru, I will speak for 5-7 minutes.
Go ahead,
and I
sir.
will speak. Okay.
Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead.
So, as a student of political science, I'm also studying the role of the media in the context of press freedom or in the context of Article 19. I have the impression that there is a drastic change in the role of the newspapers today. In this context, before I go, what are the changes that have been brought? Morarji Bhai Desai, who was a Gandhian by all standards, he was asked by the pressman or the media man on certain important issues. He was asked, sir, would you like to become again Prime Minister of India? He said, if the people want, I have no objection, even at this age of 87. Second thing he said, I don't want film wallahs to come to politics. Third thing he said, I call upon the youth not to go for newspapers or even media of communication. Sir, you were the Prime Minister of this great country. You are such a great leader. How are you suggesting that youth should not go for media? He said this media is all misguiding the youth. They only publish news items relating to sex and violence. So how do you manage? He said, in a day, I have kept 10 minutes, 5 minutes for All India Radio, 5 minutes for BBC. Within these 10 minutes, I get all information inside India and outside. So that is the view. So why he said? Because there has been a deterioration of the standard. During the Gandhian period, you have many newspapers which have come up only to propagate Gandhian views, and their objective was to fight for freedom. Take, for example, way back in 1919, we have the Samaj, the largest circulated Odia daily, and people synonymously say Samaj is a newspaper. Later stage, in the post-independence period, what do we find? Most of the newspapers in Orissa and elsewhere, they were controlled by politicians. Either it was in Odisha, Hare Krishna Mahatma, or Biju Patnaik, or R.N. Singhdeo, or Nandini Satpathy. Everybody had a newspaper, and Mahatma, at the fag end of his life, said, it is very difficult to manage a newspaper. You can manage a political party, but you cannot manage a newspaper. So now what is the trend you find? There is a corporatization of newspapers. All media houses are controlled by all big politicians, or they are controlled by industrial houses, or monopoly houses, or corporate houses, whatever you call. And they are feeding the information to the public to protect their own interest. You go through any newspaper in India, except a few, most of them are having biased, as Professor Murthy was very right. But considering the Gandhian values and its present relevance, let me say, the same thing for which Gandhi experimented throughout his life. He said, my life is a message. There is nothing called Gandhism. There is nothing called Gandhian ideology. My life is my message. And I have experimented with certain issues. What did he say? He talked about horizon welfare. Now also this has been talked about in the term of Dalit empowerment. He talked about women's liberation. Now we talk in terms of women empowerment. He talked about sustainable development. We also talked about sustainable development, the need and the greed system. Now we are projecting in our media that corruption is having a cancerous growth. He said corruption is a mind, it's a mindset. It's a disease, mental disease. That is relevant. We talk about now sanitation. We use his spectacle, Swachhata program. So we are remembering Gandhi. Gandhi talked about ants and means syndrome. That if your hand is fixed and it is good, the means must also to be good. Now we are having a problem. But what we are following is, as the Goebbelian philosophy said, Goebbelian propaganda we call it, that if a lie is repeated 100 times, it becomes a truth. That is what we are explaining. It is also said that what is your opinion? The opinion of yours is the opinion of the newspaper you read. And if you read, for example, newspapers, I'm not naming any politician, if that is controlled by a politician, in the first page only it will say, the world has not given birth to a great mass, and other news items did. And most of the newspapers now, 20, if they publish 40 pages, 32 pages are advertisements. There's no news item. I'm a very good reader of newspapers. Now I take only 15 minutes, 10 minutes for Hindu, 5 minutes for 2 Odia papers, 20 minutes over. Earlier I was taking 2 hours a day and I was reading 10 newspapers. So the content has also not been there. I will tell you another very important controversy. Now there is a tussle between the press freedom and that of the privileges of the legislature. You know about the famous Ramoji Rao case of Andhra Pradesh. He wrote a news item, Prasutur Kalini Peddalu Kalwa, for writing that in the first page. He was admonished by the chairman of the Legislative Council, then nominated by the Congress. And NTR, I remember, was in power, and he was advised by his advisors, sir, you meet the governor and say and request him that the Legislative Council of Andhra Pradesh must be adjourned, be prorogued, so that by the time it is reconvened again, you move in the assembly for the dissolution of the Legislative Council. So the 60-member Legislative Council was dissolved on this issue because Ramoji Rao got a stay from Supreme Court. So Supreme Court stayed the order of the Legislative Council chairman, and Legislative Council chairman directed then Police Commissioner Mr. Vijay Ramarao. So Vijay Ramarao got both the papers, went to N.T. Ramarao. Mr. Chief Minister, please advise what to do. If I violate Supreme Court judgment, I will be charged of contempt of court. If I don't go by the direction of the chairman of the Legislative Council, then I will also charged about the content of the house. So that was there, and in Andhra, the Legislative Council was abolished on that issue, particular issue. There are several cases of legislative privileges versus the newspaper's independence. In during the emergency period, during that period, what happened when the proclamation was made in midnight? In the morning, there was censorship, and the statesman of Calcutta, they made the editorial blank. So, and then the officer next to say, if you have the editorial blank, then we will seize your newspaper. That was the period. So now we find there is a great change in our political culture, our value system, as Professor Murthy has rightly said. So Gandhian values are obeyed more in its violation. But in a democracy like ours, we need a free press. As Blees was writing, R.K. Karanjia was writing 4 things. Blees stands for first, fearless, frank, free. These were the 4 F's that Blees was identifying. I remember when Indira Gandhi wanted to know about the feedback of the people, R.K. Karanjia was asked, "Uncle, what is my mistake?" Then Karanjia said, Karanjia was a good friend of Pandit Nehru, and Karanjia said, "Indu, your most important decision that has gone in against you is your censorship of the press. You relax the censorship, you know the reality. On the basis of the media report and intelligence report, in January 1997, she wanted to dissolve Lok Sabha and go for fresh election. And the result, in the entire north, Chilka to Kashmir, there was anti-Congress wave. From Chilka to Kanyakumari, it was in favor of Indira Gandhi. So north-south divide in the election. So what is the lesson Indira Gandhi got? Press censorship was a very wrong decision taken by Indira Gandhi's government. So we want a free press. We want the media to be free from government control. We want the tactics that are being applied by the party in power, wherever it is, to control the media. And the Gandhian values are still relevant. Whether we talk about climate change or sustainable development or ethical views or spiritualization of politics or politicians not going for power-oriented politics, all the values that Gandhi stood are still relevant, and particularly peace, international peace. In the DPST, Directive Principle Trade Policy, we have mentioned the word peace and resolution of conflicts in a peaceful manner. Then finally, before I close, I must say that prohibition for which Gandhi stood is not being practiced totally, and that is a major problem confronting. So crisis of character, then corruption, then criminalization of politics, casteism, communalism, and commercialization of everything, including education, are the dangers we face. So Gandhism or Gandhi is the only answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. అంజన్ రావు గారు మీరు ఏమైనా మాట్లాడతారా? అంజన్ రావు సార్, డాక్టర్ అంజన్ రావు. ఓకే. Dr. Sambaya, do you want to ask anything? Okay. Johnson. Johnson, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself.
Sir, the latest congratulations.
Thank.
I have sent you a personal question. You answer me there, not in public. But let me tell you, the latest news that in California and New York, statue was desecrated and what do you want to decapitated, I said. Am I audible,
Sir,
sir?
no, sir. Ask me the question, sir.
Sir, am I
Yes, sir.
audible?
No, you are
no,
not
sir.
clear. You please ask your question.
Please ask your question, sir.
My question is not a question, sir. First of all, my personal question to you was whether he got inspiration of non-violence from reading Bible. That was my question personally to you. You may elect to answer whether in public or private. I don't care. But today's news is Gandhiji's idol was desecrated, decapitated in America, sir. What is going on with the Indian sentiment, sir?
Sir, Gandhi's statue is desecrated in India too.
New York, sir. Union Square.
Yes, you're right. But Gandhi was never for statues. We have made statues for him.
How are we responding? That's the question.
Yes.
Yeah. And secondly, worship him. There is a contrast. One hand people accept, other hand people do not accept. Everywhere you find non-violence and also violence. Some issues, some countries propagate violence, some countries propagate non-violence. But what is said in 20th century is...
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Mahatma Gandhi represents an embodiment. Yeah, if you travel in the path of are our politicians practicing non-violence? Is a question mark. That's point number one. Point number two, Mahatma Gandhi was very often referring to Ramayana, and he was also reading Bible, and he was referring to it. Perhaps I did not come across where he learned the technique of non-violence. But Dennis Dalton writing about it, Mahatma Gandhi was practicing satyagraha. That's what he said. Somebody translated it as anger with the truth or truthful anger. Somebody translated satyagraha. In Indian context, we take it as non-cooperation or execute. One example I can give you, Dharna is misrepresented now. So I came across a text in which I read about Dharna means peacefully you stand in front of, suppose somebody borrowed money, if he did not repay, all the people in the village go to his house, sat in front of it, silently sitting for half an hour, 1 hour, and they used to return. That's known as Dharna. Now Dharna means it's a different context for different people. So 100 years back, what was the meaning and what is the meaning in 2022? It's called semantics. It is changing.
Sir, having read so much about Gandhiji and his journals or his writings in the Young India and Harijan, I would suggest you to read one more book, sir, Christ of the Indian Roads by Stanley E. Jones.
Okay.
Kindly note down, I will send in the chat box also. This was presented to me when I landed in Chicago in 2005. So, meaning the Indian crowd and the American crowd, they posed me. This guy is a new to US and he is from India. So suddenly an American came in the second week and gave me this book, Christ of the Indian Road by Stanley E. Jones.
Thank you, Johnson. Thank you, Johnson. Thank you. Very nice of you. Very nice of you for joining this meet. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anjan Rao, sir. Anjan Rao, please unmute yourself. Dr. Sambaya, please unmute yourself. Hello, Dr. Samaya. Ravindra Prasad.
Hello,
Ah,
sir.
ah,
Sir, it's
Samaya.
an excellent information, sir.
Ah.
It's valuable to now generation. The great politicians also. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Samaya. Thank you. James, you want to ask anything?
Thank you, sir. It's always a great pleasure to hear a wonderful scholar on Gandhi. Thank you, Professor Murthy garu. We really enjoyed your presentation, and there was a lot of you gave us another perspective on how Gandhiji looked at media, and also the aspects you told about how the kind of the things that media focuses on. There are only a few things, and a lot of things. What we all feel. I think Professor Sudhakar Kandagatla and Vishnu Chaudhary sir has already spoken a lot of things, and so well as media, as newspapers, TV, as you said, has been a major medium since the 90s. But they are playing a massive role in informing the public. In a sense, they are also, have a platform to educate the public. And we have been discussing, that what their role was supposed to be. They have completely reversed it. It has become extremely corporatized. And these are, we don't seem to find solutions to what exactly can be done to correct this. So these are just some of my feelings, sir. And I really, really enjoyed your presentation, sir. It was wonderful. It was brilliant. Thank you so much. I finished, Srinivas. I think the speaker, I think he has to log back.
Professor, Sir Murthy sir.
I don't think he's there.
No, he's here. He's muted.
Okay.
Yes, now unmute. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, right. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear, sir. So they were just some of my feelings.
Yeah,
sir.
sorry. Sir, now, shall I answer?
Yes, please.
Sir, what we talk about media is, I can give you in brief. We broadly talk about functions of media. One is information, education, and entertainment. And now news has become entertainment. News has become entertainment nowadays. So that's the concept. So one scholar said it, Indian television channels have got 3 priorities in the news coverage on television. He says cricket, crime, and cinema. 3 C's of news values for television. One is cricket, cinema, third one is crime. So now you see in television channels, daytime you cover these 3 items. Even prime time, they go for agenda setting. In the sense, Arnab Goswami sets an agenda. He comes with an agenda to discuss and talk about it. If you go to NDTV, they come with another agenda, they discuss the items. Each television channel has an agenda to project. And they select items which are suitable to their editorial policy or to their television channels. And now the problem here is they invite speakers who have got particular type of ideology. And they do not invite any person with neutral ideology, never. They never invite him. And you can see all people who appear on television screens. You can list them out and what type of people come and they talk and discuss. They come with an agenda. So now it is left to you to trust or not. Normal point in journalism is credibility is a virtue for a television or a newspaper. But that virtue is lost. So credibility is being lost in the profession. That's what I say is truth. That's what Mahatma Gandhi was saying. Truth is very essential. Now, truth has become a casualty in the media. Of course, I belong to the media. I was a journalist. I'm teaching journalism to the students. But this is a problem. How do we overcome? It is in the hands of the people. Otherwise, the media will have no future in course of time because they're shifting. That's of course big debate. Some other time I talk about that issue.
I wish media focus 50% of their time on Gandhian philosophy, sir.
If they do so, I welcome it. You do not come across single television channel or newspaper which propagates Mahatma Gandhi's ideology. Earlier, they used to publish a single quote of Mahatma Gandhi, and now nobody quotes Mahatma Gandhi. Anywhere you do not find, except in January 30th and October 2nd, you hear about Mahatma Gandhi. Remaining days, you do not hear anything from any TV channel or newspaper or editor. And surprisingly, I can tell you, the generation after 1930s, they do not know who is Mahatma Gandhi.
But one newspaper, the Andhra Prabha, every Sunday it is carrying an article edited by Nagasuri Venugopal, sir.
Okay,
yeah,
I know.
But the circulation of that paper is very few, and I think nobody's bothered to read that also. A very sorry state of affairs.
Yes, there are two things, sir. People who are 50 plus or 60 plus, they want to know something about Mahatma Gandhi. If you ask anybody, people who are less than 35 years, they do not know anything about Mahatma Gandhi. They do not know, they don't read. If you talk about Mahatma Gandhi, they will not listen. Because this is called WhatsApp generation. Every time they sit in the classroom and watch either Facebook or WhatsApp, they check WhatsApp. So what type of ethics can you teach in the classroom? That's a big question mark, of course. I don't discuss that.
Yeah. Vijay Bhaskar, you are a journalist. Meer emana maatladtara? Vijay Bhaskar. Ravindra Prasad, Meeru journalist. Meer emana maatladtara? Vijay Bhaskar, మాట్లాడండి. అన్మ్యూట్ చేసుకోండి మాట్లాడండి.
సార్
యా
yes
సార్ ఇప్పుడు మీరు అంటే మీ చర్చ కానీ మీ అనాలిసిస్ అన్ని బాగానే ఉన్నాయి సార్. కానీ ఇప్పుడున్న మీడియా గెటాన్ కావాలంటే మీడియా ఇప్పుడు ఒకప్పుడు అంటే స్వాతంత్రం ముందు ఒక కాజ్ ఉండే, దానికి కట్టుబడి పార్టీలు పనిచేసినాయి సార్. కానీ ఇప్పుడు ఉన్నాయి ప్రతి పార్టీకి అన్ని రాజకీయ పార్టీలకు వాళ్ళ సొంత మీడియాలో అయినాక అన్బయాస్డ్ గా అంటే ఎక్కడ న్యూస్ రావడానికి ఛాన్సే ఉండదు కదా సార్. రాజకీయాలకు అతీతంగా పనిచేయాలంటే
కరెక్టే సార్.
పార్టీలో ఉన్నా కూడా వాటిని జనాలు కూడా ఆదరించే పరిస్థితి లేదు. అబద్ధాలు రాస్తాను, సెన్సేషన్ రాస్తాను, అట్లాంటి వాటినే జనాలు కూడా లైక్ చేస్తున్నారు. నిజాలు రాసే వాటిని వాళ్ళకి ఇప్పుడు జనాలకు కూడా ఏంటంటే మసాలా ఉంటాయి, న్యూస్ లో మసాలా ఉంటాయి తప్ప వాళ్ళు చదివే పరిస్థితులు లేరు. అట్లనే టెలివిజన్ టీవీ ఛానల్లో కూడా అదే విధంగా ఉన్నది. అట్లాంటప్పుడు అంటే ఓన్లీ మీడియానే తప్పు పట్టేద్దామా లేదా ప్రజల్ని కూడా తప్పు పట్టడానికి ఉన్నదా?
నేను మీడియాని తప్పు పడతాను, మీడియాలో ఉన్నాను కానీ చదువుకున్నారు. మీకు వచ్చిన ఐ గివ్ యూ టు వన్ కాల్ న్యూస్ పేపర్ రేపు ఉంది జార్ఖండ్ లో, ప్రభాత్ కవర్ అని. సెకండ్ వన్ ఏం చేశారంటే రాజస్థాన్ పత్రికలు ఉన్నాయి. మీకు అమెరికన్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్స్ కూడా చెప్తాను వినండి. పీపుల్ తో కనెక్ట్ అవ్వనటువంటి న్యూస్ పేపర్స్, పీపుల్ ఇష్యూస్ కవర్ చేయని న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ కి ఎప్పుడు ఫాలోయింగ్ ఉండదండి. మీరు పీపుల్ కి సంబంధించి ఇష్యూస్ కవర్ చేస్తే అమెరికాలో ట్రెండ్ స్టార్ట్ చేశారు 1988 నుంచి 2005, 2006 వరకు. ఏం చేశారంటే పబ్లిక్ జర్నలిజం అనే కాన్సెప్ట్ తీసుకొచ్చారు. ఈ పీపుల్ కి ఏవైతే అవసరం అవుతాయో ఆ ఇష్యూసే పేపర్ లో కవర్ చేసేవారు. మన దగ్గర ఉన్న న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ ఏం చేస్తున్నాయంటే ఫస్ట్ మనకు కావాల్సిన పాలిటిక్స్ ఏమిటండి, ఎవరికి అక్కలేని పాలిటిక్స్ ఎవడు మాట్లాడినా మనం పేపర్లో వేసుకుంటూనే ఉంటాం. రెండోది క్రైమ్ జరిగిందో లేదో కూడా తెలియదు, జరగని క్రైమ్ కూడా మనం పేపర్లో వేస్తున్నట్టు పబ్లిష్ చేస్తున్నాం. ఈ రెండు ఇష్యూస్ రెండు అవసరాలు అనుకుంటున్నాం ప్రజలకి. పాలిటిక్స్ క్రైమ్ అవసరమా అంటే కానే కాదు. మీరు చూడండి, క్రైమ్ చిన్న న్యూస్ రిపోర్ట్ రాయొచ్చు కదా, ఏదో మధ్య జరిగింది ఒక 2 పారాగ్రాఫ్ రాసి సరిపోతుంది కదా, హాఫ్ పేజీ రాస్తారు. ఎందుకు హాఫ్ పేజీ రాయాలి క్రైమ్ గురించి? మనమే ఎంకరేజ్ చేస్తున్నామా పీపుల్ క్రైమ్ చేయడానికి?
తగ్గించాలి.
వాట్ ఈస్ నీడ్? అసలు క్రైమ్ కి ఎందుకంత కవరేజ్ ఇవ్వాల్సిన అవసరం ఏంటి? పీపుల్ చదువుతారని కాదు, ఎస్ యంగ్స్టర్స్ చదువుతారు కాదని లేదు. మీకు నేను ఒక విచిత్రం చెప్తాను. నేను ఒక స్టడీస్ చేశాను, ఒక స్టడీ చెప్తాను, మీకు ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ గా ఉంటుంది. న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ రీడింగ్ 16 నుంచి 24 years ఉన్న పీపుల్ ఎక్కువ మంది చదువుతారు, యంగ్స్టర్స్. దట్ ఈస్ ట్రెండ్ ఇన్ ఇండియా. న్యూస్ పేపర్ రీడర్షిప్ సర్వేస్ చెప్తున్నాయి. కానీ నేను చేసిన రీసెర్చ్ లో 10 పేపర్లు అనలైజ్ చేశాను 1 year. ఆ ఏజ్ గ్రూప్ కి సంబంధించిన న్యూస్ ఐటమ్ ఎక్కడ ఉండదు న్యూస్ పేపర్ లో. 16-24 years పీపుల్ సంబంధించిన న్యూస్ ఐటమ్ ఎక్కడ పేపర్ లో మీరు ఎక్కడ చూడండి, కాబట్టి ఎక్కడ ఉండదు. ఒక్కటి మటు కనిపిస్తుంది. ఏదైనా క్రైమ్ చేస్తే మటుకు వెంటనే వేసేస్తారు పేపర్ లో. సైబర్ క్రైమ్ చేస్తారు, 16 వాళ్ళు చేస్తారు, ఒకటే ఐటమ్. అదర్ దెన్ దిస్ ఆ ఏజ్ గ్రూప్ కి సంబంధించి న్యూస్ ఐటమ్ ఒకటి పేపర్ లో ఉంది, వాళ్ళే పేపర్ చదువుతారు ఇండియాలో.
వాళ్ళ గురించి
వాళ్ళకి సంబంధించి న్యూస్ ఎక్కడ ఉంది? నేను ఒక పేపర్ కాదు, 5 ఇంగ్లీష్ న్యూస్ పేపర్స్, 5 తెలుగు పేపర్లు స్టడీ చేశాను. 1 year ప్రాజెక్ట్ కింద చేశాను. చేస్తే మొత్తం న్యూస్ ఐటమ్స్ మీరు చెప్తే ఆశ్చర్యపోతారు. అన్ని న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ పుట్ టుగెదర్ అన్ని 1 year టైంలో ప్రతిరోజు ఐటమ్స్ స్టడీ చేస్తే 440 ఐటమ్స్ దొరికాయి నాకు ఆ గ్రూప్ పీపుల్కి. మన న్యూస్ పేపర్ ఎవరు చదువుతున్నాడు? వాడికి కావాల్సిన న్యూస్ మనం ఇవ్వాలి కదా. మనం ఎక్కడ ఇస్తున్నాం? మనం న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ ఆ గ్రూప్ వాళ్ళు చదువుతున్నారు. ఇంకొక స్టడీలో ఏం
చేస్తున్నారు,
మనమే కదా ఐటమ్ వేస్తున్నాం. మీరు ఒకరోజు ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్ చేసి చూడండి. పాలిటిక్స్ మానేసి మీరు మిగతా ఐటమ్స్ రాయని చదివే వాళ్ళు ఎక్కువ ఉన్నారు. అందుకే టెలివిజన్ ఛానల్స్ లో భక్తి ఛానల్స్ పాపులారిటీ ఎక్కువ ఉంది, ఈ ఛానల్స్ పాపులారిటీ తగ్గిపోతుంది. నౌ యూ కెన్ సీ ఇట్. అవునా కదా? మీకు యూట్యూబ్ లో మీరు చూడండి, యూట్యూబ్ లోని ఈ భక్తికి సంబంధించిన ఐటమ్ అందరూ చూస్తూనే ఉంటారు, వింటూ ఉంటారు. యంగ్స్టర్స్ అందరికి సినిమాలు కావాలి. కొంచెం ఏజ్ వచ్చిన వాళ్ళందరికీ భక్తి తప్ప మీద చూడడం మానేశారు. సో ప్రాబ్లం ఎట్లుందంటే మీడియా మన దగ్గర ఉందా మనం జడ్జ్ చేసుకుందాం. లెట్ పీపుల్ క్రాస్ హెడ్ చేస్తారు. మనం సెకండ్ క్వశ్చన్ ఏంటంటే మాకు శాలరీస్ ఎవరు ఇస్తారు అని అడుగుతారు. నేను మా జర్నలిస్టులకు ఏం చెప్తానంటే, యూ చూజ్ యువర్ ప్రొఫెషన్. నీకు శాలరీ ఇవ్వనప్పుడు డోంట్ స్టే ఇన్ ద ప్రొఫెషన్. అందులోకి వెళ్ళదు దశలకి. వై డు యూ గో ఇన్ టు ప్రొఫెషన్? వెళ్ళదు. మీకు ఒక విషయం చెప్తాను వినండి. న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ కి పెద్ద క్రైసిస్ ఎక్కడ ఉంది తెలుసా అండి? చాలా మంది ఏమనుకుంటారు న్యూస్ అదే అనుకుంటారు. కాదు, న్యూస్ పేపర్ క్రైసిస్ ఏంటంటే న్యూస్ పేపర్ బాయ్స్ లేరు పేపర్ వేయడానికి. మార్నింగ్ ఇంటికి పేపర్ డెలివర్ చేసేవాడు. దట్ ది బిగ్గెస్ట్ ప్రాబ్లమ్ ఫర్ న్యూస్ పేపర్. మీరు ఇచ్చే 50 పైసలు రూపాయి కమిషన్ కి ఎర్లీ మార్నింగ్ 3 o'clock వచ్చి పేపర్ కలెక్ట్ చేసి ఇంటింటికి వేసేవాళ్ళు లేరు బాయ్స్ ఇప్పుడు. సో దాట్ ఇస్ బిగ్ ప్రాబ్లమ్ ఫర్ న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ టు లూజ్ దర్ సర్క్యులేషన్. మనం ఇప్పుడు చెప్పండి, కంటెంట్ బట్టి న్యూస్ పేపర్ అమ్ముతామా లేదా అంటే బిజినెస్ స్ట్రాటజీస్ బట్టి పేపర్ అమ్ముతామా? దాట్స్ నౌ బిగ్ క్వశ్చన్ ఫర్ న్యూస్ పేపర్స్. ఓకే, ఐ ఆన్సర్ యువర్ క్వశ్చన్. ఇంకా చాలా చెప్పొచ్చు కానీ.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Friends, if anybody has any question, please raise your hand. I'll allow only 2 more questions because we are running short of time. Manoj, I thank you for introducing Professor.
Yeah. Firstly, my respects to my Guruji Purushottam Rao garu. Thank you so much, Murthy garu, for giving us the time and sharing your vast experience and theoretical experience. And the main aim of Gandhian journalism is service, but we don't find that service in today's journalism. The whole has the medical is controlled by some mafia around the world. In the same way, even the journalism is being controlled by journalism mafia is controlling, I believe. It's my personal belief, sir. And I sincerely thank you for giving your vast experience to us. And thank you, Ramana, for giving me the opportunity. And today's journalism is not in our hands, but some sort of professors should give a idea, sir, to bring back the journalism to the what's the way to bring back the journalism to the normal way. You should give the you are the correct. What I mean is you should decide it. In what way we can give a conclusion for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. Sir, before I ask you to answer, Uma Maheshwar Reddy, there's one raised hand, and Dr. Ashok Kumar, Gunda Ashok Kumar. These 2 questions, later we'll close the session, sir. Uma.
Namaste.
గట్టిగా మాట్లాడుమా ప్లీజ్.
TJV అధ్యక్షులు శ్రీనివాస్ గారికి నమస్కరిస్తున్నాను. ప్రొఫెసర్ గారు
Uma, we are not able to hear you.
Hello.
Yeah. Uma, you are not loud and clear.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Uma. Go ahead.
TJV కన్వీనర్ గారికి, అధ్యక్షులు శ్రీనివాస ప్రొఫెసర్ చాలా గురించి మరి మహాత్మా గాంధీ ఈ సెషన్ కి
థ్యాంక్ యూ Uma. అశోక్ కుమార్ గారు.
సార్, అందరికీ నమస్తే సార్. ఇప్పుడు మనలో చాలా మంది మీడియా బయాస్డ్ గా ఉందని అనుకుంటున్నాం సార్. చాలా మంది మేధావులు కూడా మీడియాలో ట్రస్ట్వర్తీనెస్ అనేది లేదు అని చాలా మంది అంటున్నారు. మరి అదే పరిస్థితుల్లో మీడియా మీద సెన్సార్షిప్ విధిస్తే ఆ సెన్సార్షిప్ మంచిది కాదు అంటున్నాం. ఒకవైపు ఏమో మీడియా బయాస్డ్ ఉంది అంటున్నాము, మరి అదే మీడియాని కంట్రోల్ చేసే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తే కంట్రోల్ చేయొద్దు, సెన్సార్షిప్ పెట్టవద్దని కూడా అంటున్నాము. 2 విభిన్నమైన అభిప్రాయాలు మనమే చెప్తున్నాము. ఈ విషయంలో కాస్త ఎన్లైట్ చేయండి సార్.
Sir, censorship by the government we are opposing.
Sir.
Hello. Yes. Censorship by the government we are opposing.
Sir.
ఇది అర్థమైంది కదా. అంటే గవర్నమెంట్ సెన్సార్షిప్ చేసింది అంటే బయాస్డ్ గా ఉంటుంది కనుక అది వద్దు అని అపోజ్ చేస్తున్నాం. కారణం ఏంటంటే సెన్సార్షిప్ హెస్ గాట్ 2 points. వన్ ఈజ్ న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ కి ఎప్పుడు పోస్ట్ పబ్లికేషన్ సెన్సార్షిప్, విజువల్ మీడియాకి ప్రీ సెన్సార్షిప్ ఉంటుంది. చూపించడానికి ముందు సెన్సార్షిప్ చేయాలి, విజువల్ ఇంపాక్ట్ ఎక్కువ కనుక. సో మీకు కాంట్రాస్ట్ ఏంటంటే సినిమాలకి సెన్సార్షిప్ బోర్డు ఉంటుంది, న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ లేదు కదా. అంటే మనం ఏం చెప్తున్నామంటే గవర్నమెంట్ సెన్సార్షిప్ చేయకూడదు అనేది పాయింట్, ఫ్రీడమ్ ఆఫ్ స్పీచ్ అండ్ ఎక్స్ప్రెషన్ ఉండాలి అని. సో సెన్సార్షిప్ బై ఇండివిజువల్స్, యూ సెన్సార్ యువర్ న్యూస్, మీకు ఏది కావాలో ఏది అక్కడ యూ డిసైడ్ అండ్ యూ టేక్ ఇట్. దట్ ఈస్ ది ట్రెండ్ నౌ. అంటే ఒకప్పుడు సెన్సార్షిప్ ఏమైందంటే సింగిల్ మీడియం ఉన్నప్పుడు గవర్నమెంట్ సెన్సార్షిప్ ఉంది. నౌ మల్టిపుల్ ప్లాట్ఫామ్స్, సోషల్ మీడియా ప్లాట్ఫామ్స్ ఉన్నప్పుడు who will control them? గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా ఉందంటే we cannot control social media అని చెప్పేసింది. Sites తప్ప. So now you decide whether you want to watch or you not want to watch. Therefore ఏం చేశారంటే parental control పెట్టారు పిల్లలకు వచ్చేసరికి. That you have to decide whether you require or you do not require. మనం ఏం చేస్తున్నాం అంటే the problem with India is we are borrowing some ideas from the West. So those ideas are not suitable to us for our country. Avi suitable kadandi. The second question is entakalam media untundi ane question. So I answered the question. As long as 4 functions are there for human beings, one is, are you able to listen?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Writing, reading, seeing, listening. These 4 functions of human being ఉన్నంత కాలం media will exist and it will thrive. So అప్పటిదాకా మీడియా అనేది అలా ఉంటూనే ఉంటుంది, because people require some kind of satisfying their senses and gratify చేసుకోవాలి మనకు. అంటే I'll give you one example. Earlier newspaper, average reading of newspaper was 1 hour 2 hours ఉండేది. 1990s 2000 లో it came down. Newspaper reading was 32 minutes. Average reading. Now average reading of newspaper is 27 minutes. So 27 minutes is life of a newspaper. After that it is useless.
It's a tissue paper.
Yes, it's a tissue paper after 27 minutes. So now the problem is newspapers, they have to catch your attention. Therefore they play up all types of news items. And the bullets వేసి small items highlight చేసేస్తారు. If you read the headline in 2 points, you can understand what is happening, because news was delivered to you by television channel the day before. 24 hours పోయిన తర్వాత న్యూస్ వస్తే మీకు అక్కర్లేదు కదా. So newspapers indulge in other types of practices. So therefore media ఉంటుందా అంటే yes, media will be there as long as you have these 4 functions. Seeing, listening, reading and writing.
Yes, sir.
ఈ ఉన్నంత కాలం మీడియా ఉంటుంది. ఎప్పుడు మన హ్యూమన్ ఫంక్షన్స్ పోతాయో, ఆంథ్రోపాలజిస్టులు ఏమంటారంటే ఓవర్ పీరియడ్ ఆఫ్ టైం ఫంక్షన్స్ పోతాయి అంటారు. బికాస్ దర్ నెంబర్ ఆఫ్ స్టడీస్ రీసెర్చ్ అంతా ఉంది కదా. నౌ ఇట్స్ నాట్ టైమ్ టు టాక్ అబౌట్ దిస్ ఇష్యూస్, బట్ ద ప్రాబ్లమ్ ఈజ్ ది ప్లాట్ఫామ్ ఈస్ చేంజింగ్. న్యూస్ పేపర్ బ్రాడ్ షీట్ ఇంట్లో మార్నింగ్ చదువుకునే బదులు మొబైల్ ఫోన్ లో న్యూస్ పేపర్ చదువుకుంటున్నాం.
Correct.
So you're instead of writing in a newspaper, you're writing in your mobile phone. Message రూపంలో రాసుకుంటున్నారు. You're writing something. You're listening. You are seeing. The 4 functions ఉన్నంత కాలం media will survive. అంటే it will change its character. అంటే న్యూస్ పేపర్ ప్రింటింగ్ నుంచి మొబైల్ ఫోన్ లోకి వెళ్ళిపోతుంది, ప్లాట్ఫామ్ మారుతూ ఉంటుంది. So therefore media కి ఫ్యూచర్ ఏంటంటే media will survive. They look for advertisements. They want to make money. That's the human weakness. They will encash.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. One last question, sir. Bhagavatula Ravindra Prasad is a journalist friend and is also a functionary of the Telangana Jana Vedika. Yeah. Ravindra Prasad, please unmute yourself and ask a question. Ravindra Prasad, unmute చేసుకోండి. Yeah.
అన్నా నాకు క్వశ్చన్స్ ఏం లేవు.
చేందుకు ఎత్తినట్టు
అనుకున్నా కానీ జవాబు వచ్చేసిందా?
ఓకే. రైట్. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్. తెలంగాణ జనవేదిక 429వ సదస్సుకు, ప్రతి ఆదివారం ఎంచుకునే సదస్సుకు మన ఆహ్వానాన్ని మన్నించి ప్రొఫెసర్ డివిఆర్ మూర్తి గారు వైజాగ్ నుంచి మాట్లాడడం మనందరికీ చాలా సంతోషం. మరియు ఈరోజు ఒక ఎగ్జంప్లరీ టాక్ మూర్తి గారు ఇచ్చినారు. విలువలతో కూడుకున్న జర్నలిజం ఎలా ఉండాలి, ఆ జర్నలిజం వలన ప్రజలకు ఎలా లాభం జరుగుతుంది, ప్రజలను ఎలా చైతన్యం చేయాలి అనేది ఈ రోజు మనం చేస్తున్న ఈ 429 వారాలుగా మనం చేస్తున్న యజ్ఞంలో భాగంగానే ఈ రోజు మూర్తి గారు కూడా వారి యొక్క సూచనలు ఇచ్చి మనం చైతన్యం చేసినందుకు వారికి ధన్యవాదాలు తెలుపుతూ ఈ రోజుతో ఇంతటితో ఈ సమావేశాన్ని ముగించి మళ్ళీ వచ్చే ఆదివారం ఇంకొక అంశంపై మళ్ళీ కలుద్దామని తెలియజేస్తూ అందరికీ శుభరాత్రి. గుడ్ నైట్. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్. మూర్తి గారు చాలా థ్యాంక్స్. వీఆర్ ఆనర్డ్ బై యువర్ ప్రెజెన్స్. We are really honored by your presence in this session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We will be meeting. We will be trying to rope in again and again to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ram garu.
Thank you.